This is going to be the whole challenge of trying to find out what we can repair, what we can make, and who we can find to make it. But there's a lot to do.
Matt Armstrong has built a reputation by taking on automotive projects that most people would never dare attempt. But this time, the biggest challenge isn't sitting in his workshop. It's a growing controversy that's raising serious questions about one of his most famous rebuilds. With legal claims, public accusations, and conflicting versions of the same story making headlines, the spotlight has shifted in an unexpected way. So what really happened between Matt Armstrong and Alex G, and why are things suddenly looking so bad for Matt? Why this wreck became the internet's biggest gamble? Long before lawyers, public accusations, and online debates entered the picture, this story revolved around a single decision that almost everyone believed was impossible to justify. It began with a wrecked Bugatti Veyron Pure Sport, one of the rarest hypercars ever built, and a gamble so enormous that even experienced collectors questioned whether anyone would be willing to take it. The owner was Miami-based content creator Alex Gonzalez, better known online as Alex G. Known for his flashy lifestyle and high-risk personality, Alex had built a large following by sharing expensive cars and bold investments. But one dramatic moment changed everything. During a stunt, he crashed his Veyron Pure Sport, leaving one of the world's most exclusive vehicles in devastating condition. The impact caused catastrophic damage. The front of the car was crushed, the airbags deployed, the iconic horseshoe grille and headlights were destroyed, and the carbon fiber structure suffered serious damage. Even more concerning, the transmission was hit so badly that Bugatti reportedly flew in a specialist from France to inspect it. After examining the vehicle, the conclusion was grim. The transmission was considered beyond what independent repair shops were expected to fix. The financial estimate made the situation even more unbelievable. Insurance assessments reportedly reached around $1.7 million just to repair the damage. The Veyron was officially declared a total loss, issued a salvage title, and eventually sent to Copart, the auction platform where heavily damaged vehicles often end up after insurance companies walk away from them. For most owners, that would have been the end of the story. Accept the insurance payout, move on, and leave the wreck behind. Alex chose a completely different path. After receiving the insurance settlement, he returned to the auction and bought back the exact same Bugatti. His winning bid was reportedly around $1.6 million, climbing to nearly $1.9 million after fees were added. On paper, it sounded outrageous, but considering that functioning Veyron Pure Sports regularly sell for well over $4 million, Alex believed the gamble could still make financial sense if someone could somehow bring the car back to life. There was just one problem. Almost nobody believed that someone existed. That's when Matt Armstrong entered the picture. By then, Matt had earned an international reputation for restoring vehicles that insurance companies had already written off. His videos regularly showed seemingly hopeless cars returning to the road, but this project belonged in an entirely different league. A Bugatti Veyron wasn't just another damaged supercar. It represented one of the most advanced production vehicles ever engineered. Alex had already considered selling the wreck to Matt, believing he might be one of the few people willing to even attempt the challenge. Curious to see the damage for himself, Matt boarded a flight from the United Kingdom to Miami and inspected the Veyron in person. Oddly enough, the project seemed cursed before work had even begun. While traveling to the workshop, a Chevrolet collided with a Ferrari, being driven by one of Matt's own team members. Before anyone had picked up a single tool or removed a single bolt from the Bugatti, another expensive crash had already become part of the story. Still, that bizarre accident would soon be forgotten. The real obstacle wasn't the shattered carbon fiber, the ruined transmission, or the staggering repair bill. Waiting behind the scenes was a far more powerful challenge, one that threatened to stop the rebuild before it could even begin. Bugatti itself was preparing to make its position unmistakably clear when Bugatti tried to stop the rebuild. For Matt Armstrong, repairing the crash damage was only one part of the challenge. Before the first major repair even began, he found himself facing an obstacle that no amount of mechanical skill could solve. It wasn't hidden inside the Bugatti. It came directly from Bugatti itself. As soon as the Chiron entered the rebuild process, the manufacturer reportedly blocked its vehicle identification number, better known as the VIN. That single decision carried enormous consequences. Authorized Bugatti dealerships around the world could no longer supply official components for that specific car. Whether it was a body panel, an electronic module, or a critical mechanical part, the answer was the same. The parts simply weren't available through the company's official network. The move wasn't described as a technical error or a temporary delay. According to those involved, it was a deliberate restriction. Bugatti's position was clear. If the Chiron was going to be repaired, the company believed it should return to its factory in Molsheim, France, where its technicians could oversee every stage of the restoration. That immediately placed Matt's project in unfamiliar territory. The Chiron isn't an ordinary supercar. Every major system is built around advanced engineering, and many of its components aren't available anywhere else. Losing access to factory parts meant the rebuild suddenly became far more than a difficult restoration. It became a test of whether an independent workshop could succeed where even the manufacturer seemed unwilling to cooperate. Alex Gonzalez wasn't willing to accept that outcome without a fight. Frustrated by the restrictions, he publicly warned that if the VIN wasn't unlocked, he would begin reproducing unavailable components through three-dimensional printing. Whether that statement was intended as pressure or a genuine plan, it quickly attracted widespread attention. The idea of replacement Bugatti parts being created outside the factory was enough to ignite debate across the automotive world. Then, something happened that almost nobody expected. Mate Rimac, Bugatti's chief executive, personally reached out to Alex. Their messages were later made public, showing Rimac urging him not to continue using three-dimensional printed parts while confirming the Chiron was no longer blacklisted. Soon after, Rimac released a public video explaining Bugatti's position. Rather than simply defending the company, he said the repairs required extreme caution, noting that only 2 facilities worldwide could safely perform the work because the gearbox housing had shattered and the carbon fiber monocoque had suffered structural damage. Rimac also challenged several claims circulating online, including reports about extraordinarily expensive replacement headlights, and stated that Bugatti had offered what he considered a fair proposal to repair the vehicle at its own factory. According to him, Alex chose not to accept that offer. Matt watched the situation unfold with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. He admitted it felt surreal knowing the chief executive of Bugatti was watching his videos and publicly responding to his project. But despite the attention, his decision never changed. From Matt's perspective, sending the Chiron back to France carried too much uncertainty. Once the factory disassembled the vehicle, additional damage could be discovered, driving repair costs even higher. More importantly, the independent rebuild that millions of viewers had been following would effectively come to an end. So despite the growing controversy, Matt committed to seeing the project through. Without guaranteed access to official parts, and with the manufacturer openly questioning whether the repair should even happen outside its own facility, he prepared to attempt what many believed couldn't be done. What followed would become the most remarkable chapter of the entire rebuild, and one that challenged assumptions far beyond this single Bugatti. The repair that nobody believed could work. With Bugatti standing firmly behind its position, many expected Matt Armstrong's rebuild to stall before any meaningful progress could be made. Instead, the project took a completely different direction. Rather than backing away from the challenge, Matt and his team began proving, one repair at a time, that the impossible might not be so impossible after all. One of the biggest questions surrounded the transmission. Bugatti had emphasized just how difficult it was to access, pointing out that separating the rear section of the car required specialized knowledge and equipment. It sounded like a task reserved for the factory alone. But once the work began, the process turned out to be demanding rather than mysterious. The team carefully removed the airboxes before loosening the 14 titanium bolts that secured the front section of the car to the rear drivetrain assembly. After disconnecting electrical connections, coolant lines, and other critical components, the Chiron gradually separated into 2 sections. The operation required patience and precision, but it didn't rely on any secret factory-only machine that many had imagined. As the car came apart, Even more hidden damage came into view. The impact had forced the engine forward, crushing part of the cooling system and revealing problems that couldn't have been spotted from the outside. Among the most difficult repairs was a damaged bracket positioned between the engine and transmission, a component that played a vital role in keeping everything properly aligned. Instead of waiting for a replacement that wasn't available, the team engineered one themselves. Using three-dimensional scanning technology, they captured the exact dimensions of the original part before creating a digital model. From there, they machined a completely new bracket from a solid block of aluminum. It wasn't simply a matter of making something that looked identical. Every measurement had to be exact. Even the slightest misalignment of the crank sensors could prevent the engine from running correctly or cause serious performance problems. Once the new component was completed, the transmission mount was repaired, and the two halves of the Chiron were carefully reunited using the original titanium hardware. The rebuild still faced more setbacks. During reassembly, a stubborn crank sensor would not rotate far enough for its electrical connector to fit correctly. Fixing it the conventional way meant taking the entire car apart again. Instead, Matt's team created a small access opening to reach the sensor without undoing weeks of work. It was not the factory-approved solution, but it worked and kept the project moving. As repairs continued, Matt also discovered the Chiron's airbag system could use airbags from an Audi A3, while its accelerator pedal was simply molded plastic, surprising many viewers. Then came the breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. By March, the Chiron roared back to life. Not long afterward, it moved under its own power once again, marking a milestone that countless skeptics believed would never happen. For Matt, the project had demonstrated that independent expertise could accomplish far more than many manufacturers were willing to admit. But restoring the Chiron wasn't the only surprise waiting in his workshop. Another Bugatti, one with a completely different set of problems, was about to reveal a discovery that would shift the conversation far beyond a single rebuild and potentially create even bigger problems than the Chiron ever did. What Matt accidentally exposed. While the rebuilt Chiron was attracting millions of views, another Bugatti quietly rolled into Matt Armstrong's workshop. This one wasn't the headline-grabbing Chiron, but an older Bugatti Veyron that had been repossessed after developing several mechanical problems. At first glance, it looked like just another ambitious restoration. In reality, it would end up revealing something that reached far beyond a single repair. The Veyron arrived with a long list of faults. It refused to engage a gear properly, the engine was misfiring, one of the radiators was leaking, and heat had damaged the wiring connected to the gearbox pump so badly that sections of the protective casing had crumbled apart. On paper, the car appeared to need an extensive and incredibly expensive repair. But once Matt began investigating, the story took an unexpected turn. The gearbox problem, which many would assume required a major transmission rebuild, was traced back to something astonishingly simple. After inspecting the electrical system, Matt discovered that a single blown fuse was preventing the transmission from functioning correctly. Replacing that tiny component, which reportedly cost around $3, brought the gearbox back to life. A repair that could easily have been mistaken for a catastrophic mechanical failure was solved with one inexpensive part. The discovery was surprising, but an even bigger obstacle soon appeared. When Matt tried buying replacement Veyron parts, he said Bugatti would only supply them through its authorized service network. According to Matt, that policy made independent repairs far more difficult, even for experienced technicians capable of doing the work. As the teardown continued, another pattern slowly emerged. Instead of finding exclusively custom-made components throughout the car, Matt identified several parts that were shared across the wider Volkswagen group. Considering Bugatti's corporate ownership, the discovery wasn't entirely unexpected, but seeing those components inside one of the world's most expensive hypercars still caught many viewers off guard. Among the examples he highlighted were accumulator tanks that matched those used in the Volkswagen Lupo. The spark plugs were standard N/G/K units available through normal automotive suppliers, while the gearbox pump that initially appeared to be a highly specialized Bugatti component turned out to be the same design used in the folding roof mechanism of an Audi A5. The price difference made those discoveries even more controversial. According to Matt, Bugatti's recommended service for the Veyron could cost around $25,000. By sourcing equivalent Volkswagen Group components through conventional suppliers and carrying out the repairs independently, he estimated the work was completed for roughly $1,600. Whether people agreed with his conclusions or not, the comparison immediately raised questions about the relationship between luxury branding, replacement parts, and repair costs. Without intending to, Matt had stumbled into a much larger debate. His videos were no longer just documenting ambitious rebuilds. They were encouraging millions of viewers to question why maintaining some of the world's most exclusive cars could be so expensive, and whether independent specialists were more capable than many had assumed. Those discoveries earned plenty of praise from his audience. They also attracted attention from people with far greater interests at stake. And before long, the focus shifted away from wrenches and workshop repairs to something far more serious. Allegations surfaced, legal disputes followed, and Matt suddenly found himself at the center of a controversy that extended well beyond the Bugatti itself. Why Matt Armstrong is suddenly under fire. By the time the Bugatti Chiron was back on the road, many viewers believed the hardest part of Matt Armstrong's journey was finally behind him. The impossible rebuild had been completed, millions had followed every step, and what looked like an unbelievable success story appeared to have reached its perfect ending. Instead, it marked the beginning of an entirely different battle. The first source of controversy came from Alex Gonzalez himself. After the project was completed, the relationship between the two reportedly deteriorated, and Alex began sharing a very different version of events with his audience. Claims of scams, fraud, and broken agreements quickly spread across social media, transforming what had once been celebrated as a remarkable collaboration into a public dispute. As competing narratives emerged, viewers found themselves trying to determine which version of the story reflected what had really happened behind the scenes. At nearly the same time, another challenge appeared. During April, Matt publicly acknowledged that legal threats connected to his automotive projects had become a reality. Although he stopped short of revealing specific legal details, his comments suggested the situation had progressed well beyond online disagreements. The conversation was no longer limited to videos, reaction posts, or public statements. Lawyers had entered the picture, adding a level of seriousness that couldn't simply be dismissed as internet drama. Interestingly, Matt also tried to calm some of the speculation surrounding his relationship with Bugatti chief executive Mate Rimac. Rather than portraying them as personal enemies, he compared their situation to a rivalry like Messi and Ronaldo, two respected competitors whose supporters often create far more conflict than the individuals themselves. It was his way of suggesting that public perception had become much more dramatic than the relationship actually was. But the story didn't stop there. At roughly the same time, another legal dispute involving Bugatti began drawing attention for completely different reasons. A Miami dealership known as Brahman Bugatti filed a lawsuit against the manufacturer, alleging that Bugatti had failed to honor fair warranty reimbursement practices required under Florida franchise law. According to the complaint, agreements were allegedly withdrawn. Certain vehicle sales bypassed the dealership entirely, and local Bugatti owners were reportedly encouraged to seek warranty service elsewhere. Although Matt wasn't involved in that lawsuit, the similarities were difficult to ignore. Across these separate disputes, the same underlying issue appeared again and again. Questions over who controls the parts, who controls the repairs, who decides where these vehicles can be serviced, and perhaps most importantly, who controls the story surrounding one of the world's most exclusive automotive brands. Whether intentional or not, Matt's videos pulled back the curtain on a system that few people ever get to see. By documenting every obstacle, every workaround, and every unexpected discovery, he challenged assumptions that many believed were untouchable. To millions of viewers, it was simply fascinating entertainment. To others, it may have represented something far more disruptive. Today, the rebuilt Bugatti is no longer the biggest headline. The conversation has shifted toward accusations, legal claims, and unanswered questions that continue to divide audiences. Whether Matt Armstrong ultimately emerges with his reputation intact or finds himself facing even greater challenges remains to be seen. But one thing is already clear. Rebuilding one of the world's rarest hypercars may have been the easy part. Living with everything that followed could prove to be the real test. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories. Share your thoughts in the comments, then watch the next video on screen.